Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am not immune to the whims of a nation or the current conspiracies, things of that nature. I really don't want to talk about Jeffrey Epstein. I'm kind of sick and tired of hearing about him, but I do understand. I hope this is on. Thank God it's been on the whole time. Um, I'm not tired of it in the way that Trump's tired of it, apparently. More tired of it because, well, I didn't expect anything to happen. And hopefully, on this episode, I can kind of explain why I didn't expect anything to happen. So, I guess let's get a few things out of the way. First and foremost, on non Epstein Maxwell news, we had kind of a defeat on the gun front with the One the Big Beautiful Bill. So as most of you who follow me are aware and mad about, kind of rightfully so, but to a lesser extent not, the suppressor and was it the Hush Act and the Short Act got dropped by a Senate parliamentarian who knew that was a thing. But there is a slight victory in that we got the tax part of it waived. So there is no more $200 tax stamp, or there's a tax stamp, but I guess it's free now. It's kind of an odd deal to think about. I hadn't really thought about till just now, but you don't have to pay $200 anymore to either get a suppressor or a make a short-barreled rifle, SBR. Why that's a good thing? Mainly that's a good thing because the NFA has been challenged in court, mainly in 1935 and 37, I believe. And basically it made its way up to the Supreme Court, in which the Supreme Court said that it was constitutional because it was just a tax and government is allowed to lay taxes in effect, even though you couldn't do a poll tax. I think that came later, but that's still a bullshit ruling, because you can't tax somebody's speech. You shouldn't be able to tax somebody's right to defense, self-defense, in any which way they seem fit. I guess there's some gray area there, but the poll tax one, again, something I never thought of until just now. That's kind of interesting. Not only is it interesting that a poll tax would fall under a tax which would be justified because government can levy taxes, but it's even more interesting because voting is not a right, it's a privilege. But that's a topic for another time. So I'm optimistic on the aspect of the NFA being whittled away because now that there's no tax, a lawsuit was filed. A lawsuit was filed by Gun Owners of America. Oh God, I can't remember the rest of them. There was like 10 defendants. Palmetto State Armory was part of it. I think even Silencer Shop was a part of it. So some of you had to eat crow on that one, apparently. FPC is a part of it. Even the NRA is a part of it, which I did see some folks who were like, screw the NRA, they blah, blah, blah. I agree with you. I hate the NRA. But the thing about the NRA is they have the connections and they have the good old boys and they have the boomers on their side in Congress. So, you know, if it works, man. They're on the lawsuit. They're going after it. So maybe they're turning the ship around. Probably not. But this is better than them going, screw you guys. Good luck. F it. You're on your own. So money and connections get you a lot farther than money, period. Or money and connections get you a hell of a lot farther than truth or being right or being principled. It's kind of the way systems work, kind of the way humans work, unfortunately. But that's a good thing. So I'm very optimistic. It's just going to have to wait a little longer. I've waited my, well, technically I've waited my entire life, all 41 plus years, but I didn't really know about it until I don't remember when I found out about the NFA. But I probably found out about it watching the History Channel. Didn't apply to me. Blah blah blah. Anyway, so also Tim Kennedy apparently is the giant asshole we all knew he was. But let's get into the meat and potatoes here of the Epstein thing. I don't even know where to start on this, but I hate the whole Epstein thing, not only because it's so sickening, but I hate the whole Epstein thing because of the conspiracy theories it has pushed out there. So let's just get into it. So I've printed some things out because I am still old and I do like to hold paper in my hand. I'm always reminded of the great L. Rushbaugh, who used to, of course, he was on radio. I think he did video later, but I don't know that that was ever widely broadcast. But the old, I hold in my once nicotine-stained fingers a piece of paper. I didn't have nicotine-stained fingers, but I hold in my fingers a couple of things. These are press releases from the U.S. Attorney's Office, both from the Southern District of New York, in relation to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. So I wanted to start with a basic, at least a basic government understanding of what they allege and believe Mr. Jeffrey Epstein was engaged in doing and what their case was. And then we can, again, if you want to comment what you think I guess I should put up the banner. I made it. There you go. So comment what you think the Epstein, what do you think Epstein is, but so Jeffrey Epstein entered into a plea agreement with the state of Florida, well, with the federal government in charges stemming from the state of Florida in 2008. Okay. You can look up the plea agreement, which I actually did, so I guess I could tell you. So basically, he pled guilty to 2 state charges, which this is also very weird that you have the federal, the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of Florida. So that's a federal official bringing him up on state charges, or at least having him plead guilty to state charges. I don't understand a lot of the nuances of our federal or of our justice system, or the lack of justice system, whatever you want to call it, but we're just going to go through this. But Epstein pled guilty to 2 state charges of soliciting and procuring a person under 18 for prostitution. He served 13 months in a Palm Beach County jail, which I've never been to jail, but you could probably do worse in a Palm Beach County, Florida jail. Anyway, where he was allowed to participate in a work release program, leaving during the day to go to his office. I've heard many accounts and stories that basically it's like glorified house arrest. But anyway, he had to register as a sex offender, and then he had to make payments to victims identified by the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigations. One of the more interesting parts of this plea agreement is that he and his alleged co-conspirators got immunity from federal charges in Florida. Again, nuances of the system. So that is 2008. I probably should have looked up when all of that stuff was done. Maybe it wasn't done. Maybe it was still in effect when he was arrested subsequently on July the 6th, 2019. This press release is from July the 8th, 2019. So a happy anniversary, Epstein. So Jeffrey S. Berman, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, along with Assistant Director in charge of the New York Field Office of the FBI and James P. O'Neill, Commissioner of the New York City Police Department, announced on July 8, 2019, that Jeffrey Epstein was arrested Saturday, July the 6th, 2019, and charged with sex trafficking of minors and conspiracy to commit sex trafficking of minors. The indictment alleges that between 2002 through 2005, Epstein sexually exploited and abused dozens of underage girls by enticing them to engage in sex acts with him in exchange for money. Okay, you call it prostitution. Epstein allegedly worked with several employees and associates to ensure that he had a steady supply of minor victims to abuse, and paid several of those victims themselves to recruit other underage girls to engage in similar sex acts for money. He committed these offenses in locations including New York, and Palm Beach, Florida. Remember, he had a plea agreement against federal charges in Florida. Now, it is possible that these new charges violated or took away that plea agreement, or superseded whatever that plea agreement in 2008. But so continue on. According to the indictment unsealed in Manhattan federal court, again, federal charges. From at least 2002 through at least 2005, Jeffrey Epstein enticed and recruited and caused to be enticed and recruited dozens of minor girls to visit his mansion in New York, the New York residence, quote unquote. How do they define mansion, by the way? Anyway, and his estate in Palm Beach, Florida, the Palm Beach residence, to engage in sex acts with him, after which he would give the victims hundreds of dollars in cash. In order to maintain and increase the supply of victims, Epstein also paid certain victims to recruit additional underage girls whom he could similarly abuse. In this way, Epstein created a vast network of underage victims for him to sexually exploit, often on a daily basis, in locations including New York and Palm Beach. Skip ahead a little bit. Talks about some of the ages of the victims. I don't really want to get into that too much. I think we all kind of know. In creating and maintaining this network of minor victims in multiple states to abuse and exploit sexually, Epstein worked with others, including employees and associates, who facilitated his conduct by, among other things, contacting victims and scheduling their sexual encounters with Epstein at the New York residence and at the Palm Beach residence. Skip ahead. Jeffrey Epstein, 66 years old, is charged with one count of sex trafficking of minors, which carries a maximum sentence of 40 years in prison, and one count of conspiracy to engage in sex trafficking of minors, which carries a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison, which seems kind of light. Okay, so those are the charges Epstein was facing when he allegedly deleted himself. So let's move on to what is known as the madam, I guess, of why do the comments say 12:43 a.m.? Why do only B's comments say 12:43 a.m.? Where the hell are you, B? Anyway, don't answer that. Maybe you have a VPN on. That's funny. Anyway, so Ghislaine Maxwell. On December the 29th, 2021, Ghislaine Maxwell, following a 1-month jury trial, was found guilty on December 29, 2021. Maxwell was found guilty following a 1-month jury trial of conspiracy to entice minors to travel to engage in illegal sex acts, conspiracy to transport minors to participate in illegal sex acts, transporting a minor to participate in illegal sex acts, sex trafficking conspiracy, and sex trafficking of a minor. This is where it gets a little bit interesting to me. The case, not the acts, from at least 1994 up to and including in or about 2004, up to and including in or government. Ghislaine Maxwell assisted, facilitated, and participated in Jeffrey Epstein's abuse of minor girls by, among other things, helping Epstein to recruit, groom, and ultimately abuse victims known to Maxwell and Epstein to be under the age of 18. The victims were as young as 14 years old when they were groomed and abused by Maxwell and Epstein, both of whom knew that their victims were in fact minors. As a part and in furtherance of their scheme to abuse minor victims, Maxwell and Epstein enticed and caused minor victims to travel to Epstein's residences in different states, which Maxwell knew and intended would result in their grooming for and subjection to sexual abuse. Going to skip ahead because I don't want to go over these depictions of what they allegedly did or what she was convicted of doing with Epstein. So I'll skip ahead to the end here. In the earlier phase of the conspiracy, from at least approximately 1994 through approximately 2001, Maxwell and Epstein identified vulnerable girls, typically from single mother households, weird, and difficult financial circumstances. This earlier phase required the defendant. Some of the wording of this is suspect, to say the least. Weird. This earlier phase required the defendant and Epstein to identify one girl at a time to target for grooming and abuse. In the later phase, from approximately 2001 until at least approximately 2004, Maxwell and Epstein, notice we went from defendant to Maxwell and Epstein, to now naming Maxwell again. Maxwell and Epstein enticed and recruited and caused to be enticed and recruited minor girls to visit Epstein's Palm Beach residence to engage in sex acts with Epstein, after which Epstein, Maxwell, or another employee of Epstein's would give the victims hundreds of dollars in cash. Maxwell and Epstein encouraged one or more of those victims to travel with Epstein with the intention that the victim engage in sex acts with Epstein. So that would be your trafficking. Moreover, in order to maintain and increase the supply of victims, Maxwell and Epstein also paid certain victims to recruit additional girls to be similarly, I swear I'm not retarded, abused by Epstein. In this way, Maxwell and Epstein created a network of underage victims for Epstein to sexually exploit. Okay, so that's what Maxwell was convicted of. And now we know what Epstein was charged with. What's odd to me is the dates. Epstein was on the hook for things between 2002 and 2005. They went after Maxwell for 1994 through 2004, which is fine because there is no statute of limitations on sex crimes with kids, apparently, which is a good thing. But it's odd to me that these don't really overlap, but for a couple of years. So what's also odd to me is that why wasn't Maxwell brought up on charges in the 2008 case in Florida? Because as any Google search will tell you in the first part of the AR overview, immunity from federal charges for Epstein and his alleged co-conspirators in Florida was part of that plea agreement. So who exactly did they determine to be the co-conspirators, and how is it that they knew exactly about Maxwell on this second set of charges for Epstein? This is all very odd. Very, very odd. Because also, Epstein was brought up, his charges was one count of conspiracy to engage in sex trafficking of minors and one count of sex trafficking of minors. But we have alleged victims, plural, victims, which in the Maxwell case, we had a number of victims who testified against Maxwell. The other thing that's a little grainy, to say the least, is using the other girls to recruit more girls, which I guess you could create, they could say they probably offered some of them immunity for their testimony. But you could also say under duress, they were doing these things for fear of reprisal, maybe retaliation, what have you. So a couple of things I want to make clear here, at least based on the government's case, is Epstein was an intelligence asset with an unlimited bank account and dirt on the most powerful people, which seems to be the very ubiquitous consensus kind of thing. At least that's the view there. Let's leave that up there. So much of the reaction from Trump's DOJ, FBI mainly, saying that Epstein did off himself and that there is no video or there is no client list. So much of the reaction is people saying, well, if there's no client list, then who did Ghislaine Maxwell traffic these girls to? Then she's innocent. Well, she trafficked them to Jeffrey Epstein. That's the case. That's what she was convicted of. That was what was alleged. That's what she got convicted of. Jeffrey Epstein was a client. Was he the client? That remains to be seen. The other thing is that just because, if this is some sort of like honeypot operation or whatever we want to call it, that was intelligence from different countries, maybe one country, multiple, whatever, you don't necessarily have to get your target if you're Epstein or the intelligence services. Let's say you pull a congressman from the United States or a senator or even a former president or even a current president. Let's say that's your target and you've made the connection with Epstein, their friends, and they end up on Epstein's island. You don't have to necessarily do anything illegal as far as engage with sexual acts with a minor, do anything that is illegal other than it just looks bad to be caught up in the Epstein thing. You can say, if you're Epstein or the intelligence, hey, you know what happens at this island. You know who this guy is. Well, you were at the island. You were on the plane. Sure would be a real bad thing if people were to find out that you were there and make their own assumptions as to what you were doing. Okay. Very possible that they used it that way. Now, it's also very possible in another way that I'm sure we've all seen the pictures, whether it's Donald Trump, Elon Musk, numerous other people at an Epstein party, quote unquote, where like Maxwell is either posing with them or in the background, or even pictures with Epstein, pre-2008 plea deal, At least that's what it appears to be. Just because you're in the same room with someone doesn't mean you're doing the same thing they're doing, even if it is their party. This guy had a ton of money. We don't know how he got it, but he did have a ton of money. Throws a party. There's a bunch of people, It's just like the same thing with the Diddy parties. Like, I guess under the Diddy parties, there was like an early party and then the freak off or whatever. So just because you went to a Diddy party or you were at an Epstein party doesn't mean you were into kids or other weird stuff. It just means you went to a party and you got your picture taken, unfortunately. But that's also, if you're throwing the party, that's kind of your goal, I would think, is to be seen with the people, your guests, have it on record, and kind of go from there. Even if you're throwing a party, obviously that would mean you're some sort of kind of somewhat outgoing person. There's the 4th of July was last week. I don't really care to take pictures, but there were pictures of me at a family 4th of July thing. I don't know what everyone in my family is up to, an extended family. But just because I was there, took a picture with them, doesn't mean that I was into the things that they're into and vice versa. Just because I took a picture with my uncle doesn't mean he's in the fucking podcast. The guy's like 70. Not sure he knows what a podcast is. So there's that part of it. Now, just want to go on record and say that I was right about Dan Bongino. That he's a blowhard douchebag. Okay? A lot of folks, a lot of people that I know apparently used to watch his show somewhat regularly. He was some sort of truth teller. That he was some sort of anything beyond just some sort of like online caricature. That he really tells it how it is and he throws his hands around and he's from New York. Looked like a bald douchebag the whole time in a t-shirt that was way too tight. I don't know. Maybe you're into that sort of thing. I don't know. I never found him quite engaging whatsoever. I don't know. Maybe it's an IQ thing. I don't really quite get it. It's unfortunate when he had cancer, but I don't want cancer to invade anyone's body except, I don't know, Epstein, if he's still alive, apparently. But I started calling Dan Bongino Dove Bongino, by the way, this week. Kash Patel, I don't know what to think. But this whole thing of like, whether it's Bongino or Patel just saying, hey, it's me. Just trust me. Ain't gonna fucking fly, bro. We don't trust you. We had trust in you, thinking that you would do the right thing. You would do the things that no one else would do. And then you said a whole bunch of things about that you had friends or you had sources or you had this or you had that who told you all of these things about Epstein and the Butler assassination attempt and all this stuff. And they told you all these things, right? Guess it was just for the ratings, right, Dove? Douchebag. I don't quite understand it. One of the things that tipped me off to Bongino too was he's some part of Rumble, which I'm streaming live on, and they might shut it down. But he's some part of Rumble. I don't know if he's just like a money part. He was the talent, what the agreement is, but he's some part of the ownership group who went public. Why, if the idea was to take on the YouTube of the world, to take on the, I don't know, whatever else is out there, to take on big tech, you're going to go public, which means that all of the same companies could literally invest in your company, could buy it up, and now they control you. The BlackRocks, the Vanguards, the State Streets, the what have yous now can control your company and tell you what to do. It's kind of like the whole Google thing as well. So that was kind of my first tip off on Bongino being kind of full of shit. And then he's just now kind of proving it completely. Which is this is spot on. Pam Bondi, I don't know. It is what it is, I guess. Seems to be somewhat coherent and able to explain herself. The press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, whatever her name is, there was so much made this week about when she came out and had to talk about Epstein, she didn't have her crucifix necklace on. And they're like, oh my God, she doesn't have her crucifix necklace on that she wears like all the time because you wouldn't wear that while you were lying. I think you would. Because your implication there, dum-dums, is that she is lying, which would make her a non-Christian, at least in your eyes, which if I was going to lie to you, if I was going to set it up that I had this big thing to lie to you about, I would want to do everything I possibly could do with my posture, my appearance, my look to make you want to trust me with everything that I possibly say. By the way, when you start making accusations like that, Christians, you're kind of doing it wrong. Not a Christian myself, but from everything I can read in that giant book, you're kind of doing that wrong. So back to the Epstein thing. There's some the dates thing really gets me. Why Ghislaine is brought up on charges from 1990 or from actions, from 94 to 2004, but Epstein in his second go around was only 02 to 05, even though his charges were now going to be filed in the state of New York, which he was only had a non-prosecution agreement with the state of Florida, but not the state of New York. So it's very odd. And it's also very odd that when Epstein was brought up before, that there was no co-conspirator, what have you. And yes, I'm very well of the what was it, Alex Acosta was his name, Alex Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney down there, talking about I believe it was sworn testimony before Congress that he was told that Epstein was an asset of intelligence. What does that mean? Well, I have to ask Mr. Acosta. What intelligence? I don't know that he said U.S. intelligence. He may have. But also, what does that mean? Because there's like DNI, Department of National Intelligence. So was it CIA, FBI, both? There's also this very inconvenient not fact, but there's a very inconvenient crossover. One of the prevailing conspiracy theories or theories is that to B's point earlier, Epstein was an intelligence asset. There's a lot of folks that believe that Epstein was an intelligence asset of multiple places or multiple agencies. And there's a lot of people, which are the CIA, Mossad, some believe even French intelligence, possibly Canadian. Seems kind of weird that that even exists. Sorry, cool. But that he was an asset of multiple intelligence agencies. There are some ties that take him directly back to just straight up Mossad. How close Mossad and CIA are all the time is debatable, unknowable, at least by us common folk. Are they one and the same? Are they wings of the same bird? Are they, who knows? Are they competing against each other? But this one time they work together. Don't know, but the odds that he was more Mossad than anything are pretty high, because Maxwell's father apparently had some deep ties to the state of Israel, and their government and intelligence service. I've listened to a few podcasts this week that all talking about Epstein and Maxwell and all the things. I haven't had time to really dive into the deep minutia of it. Again, I've really tried to kind of avoid this whole nonsense, because it's not somewhat interesting, but because this is exactly what I thought would happen. Not because it's necessarily true. We could be being lied to, but because it's just how it's going to play out. I mean, if the government had all of this stuff on them, didn't they have it in 2008? Didn't they have it in 2000? Didn't they have it? What was his hell? Didn't they have it in 94, 95? I mean, when is it exactly that this trafficking to sexually abuse minors pops up on the radar of the authorities? I mean, you know, bin Laden was on the radar since the 80s. A number of people, maybe they were too busy, messing with Randy Weaver and the Branch Davidians or whatnot. Or maybe they were too busy setting up a bomb plot in Oklahoma City. That's a deep rabbit hole that I'm in right now. The Oklahoma City bombing. Spoiler alert, Tim McVeigh did do it. But did he do it alone? So maybe they were too busy with that. Maybe they were too busy trying to set the case for homegrown domestic terrorism and white supremacy being a scourge upon the United States that had to be fought with every asset and agency within the purview of the federal government. Maybe that's why they didn't see Epstein doing what he was doing and Maxwell. The other interesting thing about Maxwell is she's a goddamn foreigner. So you're in the system right away. Like if it was just Jeff Epstein doing his weirdo, nasty, sick thing, you could fly, under the radar, pardon the pun. You could get away with this for a while. If you just, you could get away with it. You could at least get away with it for a while, especially with private jets, private island, any number of things. You could do this probably for a while, so long as you just weren't flaunting it, which apparently was a pretty kind of low-key guy other than the sex stuff. But there's so many questions around him of like where he got his money. Why is Leslie Wexner mixed into this? Which is another interesting. Les Wexner, I think his biggest company, most prominent company that everyone knew was Victoria's Secret. The guy lived and was running the businesses out of Ohio. I forget the name of the brand exactly. It was like American Brands or something like that. But interesting enough, for some reason, my wife and I watched the Abercrombie and Fitch doc on Netflix. He's the guy that did Abercrombie and Fitch, bought it, turned it around, or he hired a CEO who then turned it around and made it the thing that it was. And there's some allegations around there's some sexual allegations around Abercrombie and Fitch as well, which is also interesting that they didn't really get into that in the doc other than with a photographer. They were too busy talking about like DEI, but they didn't call it DEI. But it made it funny because they didn't realize in doing the doc, they were like championing that these people that they had infiltrated basically into Abercrombie and Fitch, who had a basically whites only policy in hiring and continuing to have hired, and obviously in a lot of their modeling, although they conveniently left out that there's like Asian ladies and whatnot mixed in there. But the height of its brand was nothing but like white models and nothing but like white workers at the stores. And so they in the doc they talked about how it was such a big deal to get underrepresented people hired, with not only hired but then promoted. But at the same time they're talking about all this happening, the company just takes a shit. So I found it kind of funny that their angle they worked, but maybe we should get back to yeah. But that's glad you posted that, B, because that brings me back to my inconvenient little point here of that. I've been called numerous times, or at least alleged, implied that I was anti-Semitic because I was questioning some of the tactics that the IDF has been using, why they're still doing some certain things in Gaza, also because of their attack on Iran, and then also questioning kind of the relationship of the United States and Israel as far as like mutually beneficial things of that nature. I never once mentioned Jews or the Jewish people, but apparently if you question that, then you're questioning Jews themselves somehow. Again, I've made this point before, but somehow you're questioning Jews and Jewish people themselves, even though that the most staunch pro-Zionists or pro-Israel or pro-Israel defenders like Ben Shapiro's, Dave Rubin's of the world will tell you that it is not an apartheid state that has a population of 20% of non-Jewish Muslims living with, or excuse me, non-Jewish Arabs living within Israel, the state of Israel, that are represented in the Knesset and their Supreme Court. So I guess I would also be anti whatever they are if I'm anti-Semitic for talking about them. But one of the very uncomfortable things about this is when so many of those people will say, and I notice a lot of them are very quiet about this, and they're being labeled as, they're just Trump stoolies. They're so super pro-Trump. They don't want to question it. They might mention it, and they might just pass it off as, oh, well, you got to just, FBI said so, and we trust Cash Patel, and we trust Dov Bongino. So there you go. I think the more inconvenient truth about it is, or the more inconvenient allegation is that Mossad was involved, which means Israel's involved, which means, according to them, Jews were involved. Now, I don't agree with that. I agree that if Israel, or if Mossad's involved, then the government of Israel's involved, which also means that Benjamin Netanyahu, past leaders, were also involved, because remember, we go from 1994 through 2004 in our allegations, in our charges, but we're not arrested until 2019, which is also a weird thing that I probably should have pointed out earlier. So, was Israel involved in child trafficking, or Mossad on representing the government of Israel? So there's a lot of egg on the face of the super pro Israel can do no wrong crowd, or the Israel government, the IDF can do no wrong crowd. There's a lot of egg on their face right now, and they're trying to save face. So it's very, very weird. It's very inconvenient, and do not let those people off the hook for what they're saying, for them passing it off as just being Trump stoolies. Two things can be true at the same time, but the same folks notice their pattern of what Israel's doing in Gaza is justified because of October 7th, even to this day where they're still blowing up everybody. And, well, there's nothing to see here when it comes to Epstein. Now, that doesn't mean they're on the list as well. Whatever. Oh, I'm sorry. The list doesn't exist. My bad. The list may not exist, guys. It may not. You run the problem. Let's talk about the list. It would make sense to keep a list, to a lot of us, of people you had there, that you had blackmail on, that you had dirt on, that were all, I don't know, now your assets, I guess, is the best way to put it. But it also would not make sense, because if it falls into the wrong hands, now do they not only have you, they have all of those people, and now they can be blackmailed by the wrong people. Let's come up with a thought here, a theory. Let's say that the CIA and Mossad were working together with a intelligence operation involving Jeffrey Epstein on his island, and they were getting dirt on all these people. Let's take the prevailing narrative here, or at least the prevailing conspiracy here, that's what was happening. And let's say a client list did exist. Okay, fair enough. If it exists on paper or digitally or whatever, anything outside of your head, it can be taken. Let's say the Saudis got a hold of it, or the Iranians, or the Qataris, or the Brazilians, or anybody's here. So if let's say Saudi Arabia gets a hold of it, or the Chinese, the shifty Chinese. If the Chinese get a hold of your honeypot operation involving the highest levels of not only the United States government, possibly the Israeli government, the United Kingdom, all of these people, royal families, actors, lawyers, apparently, Alan Dershowitz. I forgot about that, Merc. Thank you for putting that in there. Alan Dershowitz. Look, I got a massage, but my underwear was still on. Maybe you just deny it, bro. Or maybe say, I got a massage. She said she was 18, what have you. But let's say all of these people are on a physical list or a digital list that exists on a thumb drive. There's a fucking thumb drive around here somewhere. Let's say that exists, right? And the Chinese get a hold of it. That's a problem. That's a big problem. Because once they have it, they have it. Now, or the Russians, whomever. Now, they can get a hold of this. You know, the whole thing, too, is so funny when you think about like the Russian collusion nonsense of that. The Russians hacked our election. You know, Trump's an illegitimate president in his first term, according to Hillary, because, you know, the Russians did what they did. He was colluding with them. You remember the supposed P tapes, all of that. Don't you think if this existed digitally or on paper, it would be a problem if someone else got it, especially the Russians who went, look at this. Looky what we got. All while you're sitting there going, if you're Hillary Clinton and her people around her going, yeah, the Russians hacked us. And then a month later they go, looky what we got. Well, didn't you just lend credibility to the story? So that's one of the reasons you wouldn't have a physical list. You wouldn't have a drive that had, you know, these people's names on it, let's say. You know, allegedly there's tapes of these people. Again, unless it's like VHS tapes or it's closed circuit or it's whatever. Again, you have to give some credit to your enemies abroad. If you think that the Chinese are just stupid, or the North Koreans, they're just ignorant, they're incapable, they can't do anything, they're going to eat your lunch, period. Never underestimate your enemy, your adversary, because the second you do that, they are going to win. They're going to hit you in the mouth, either physically or metaphorically, and they're going to win. So, to think that they couldn't get a hold of that if it existed outside of physical, like VHS tapes, and that they're not plugged in to various other intelligence agencies. You know, there's spy versus spy. There's the Chinese are trying to spy on us. We're trying to spy on them. We're both probably doing decent jobs of it. But the idea that you can have this operation going for this long, apparently since 1994, and keep it quiet with physical records of it, that's tough. And no one who you don't want to see it ever sees it or gets a hold of it. Man, you're really playing some Russian roulette there. So that's one of the reasons I had thought of why you wouldn't do that, why you wouldn't have a physical thing. Why you would have a physical thing? Well, that's kind of self-explanatory there. But the whole Epstein Maxwell thing, it is possible, again, that Epstein is the only client. It is possible. It's also occurring to me at this point that I should mention, or at least bring up the fact that you remember when Epstein's second deal went down. I can't remember. It was probably after he was found dead in the cell, that Maxwell's name came up in popularity, and that we knew that she was allegedly she was on the run. Well, she was on the run because she didn't turn herself in. They were looking for her. We knew her name. We knew she was attached to Maxwell. All of those things. And then all of a sudden she turns up in like New Hampshire, where she paid cash for a house. Like, she wasn't hard to find at all. She's like a French citizen who, if I remember correctly, has an Israeli passport. Like, she has multiple like, she could have got that. Roman Polanski's still banging 14-year-olds in the ass in France right now on the lam because he got out of here and went to France, and they can't be extradited. So if you're Maxwell, why would you not leave? Does that make sense to anyone? She could go anywhere. She obviously had money. She obviously had some connections. She obviously had means to an end. Why the hell wouldn't she leave? So she's just going to do, she got, what did she get? 20 years? 240 months. Fucking dumbass feds. Yeah, that's 20 years, assholes. So she's just going to do 20 years, just to be an upstanding citizen all of a sudden? Make it make sense. I guess some of this is really flying in the face of my own points. France doesn't have... Exactly. Roman Polanski's still over plowing 14-year-olds in hot tubs in the ass. Drinking the finest of wines, probably. I mean, it's crazy. That is the perfect comment, Mert. That explains old Dove Bongino exactly. All hat, no cattle. But it's just like, just think of yourself. If you had connections, you had a passport, and especially in France with a non-extradition treaty or wherever, wouldn't you leave? Like, I'd be gone. You probably have a private jet too. You definitely have connections. Your father's connected to all kinds of intelligence agencies. Like, bro, I'm out. I'm gone. I don't even have connections. I'd get the hell out. I'm not gonna do 20. I mean, especially the fact that, like, they didn't arrest her or get her until Epstein was gone, like in the ground, gone. So it's like, didn't you kind of know? Like, okay, so let's not necessarily try to put ourselves in Maxwell's body here because of the things she's convicted of doing. But let's just think, if it was yourself and your close associate whom you were hooked up with, photos with, I guess a lover of some point, whatever that meant to them. Let's say that person gets picked up on a charge and you're implicated in said charge. Probably already looking for a way out, right? Okay. Then he dies under mysterious circumstances in fucking custody. Your spidey sense has to go off. I mean, even if like, okay, so in 2008, he did this plea deal in Florida. He gets picked up. He's in New York, and you're like, all right, it's just going to be another plea deal. We're not worried about it. We got intelligence. We got this, that, or the other. Like, we are working with Mossad and the CIA and whomever, right? French intelligence, whatever. And you're like, it's just be another plea deal. It'll be cool. Maybe he does 6 months, whatever. But then he dies or kills himself. But he's dead, right? In custody, he's dead. Locked in a cell. You gotta go, right? Like you're well, I'm next, right? The other part of this too is like, where's that sentence? Let's see here. I want to find it so I can read it exactly. Yeah, paid certain victims to recruit others is wild. One of the things I noticed too, and I should have brought this up sooner, but reading the Epstein transcript here, that blacked me out, didn't it? But reading the press release on the Epstein charges versus the Maxwell charges is they never mention Maxwell in the Epstein ones, which is weird to me. I mean, you could even kind of redact it and say whatever, but like, I mean, it's just wild that they don't mention her at all. And we know that they obviously knew who she was because it wasn't too much longer they were looking for her. I mean, it's just, several employees and associates to ensure he had a steady supply of minor victims to abuse, which is a horrific sentence to read again. But like, when they in the Maxwell one, they list Epstein every single time, which is just wild to me. Jeffrey Epstein, Maxwell and Epstein enticed and caused minor victims. See, that's the other part is like it lines up exactly with the charge. The allegations lined up exactly. Which is just wild. And why weren't they going after Epstein for the 94 stuff before, the 2002? Why isn't that part of it? All of this is just so fucking odd. Like none of this really makes sense at all. Like your case is pretty open and shut apparently, but that's the other thing too. Is like even the girls, tried to read some of the transcripts from the court, and it really was just like report. If you've ever seen like a court transcript, like a physical court transcript, like fuck that. Joey, if you're in here, if you're watching, you're listening or whatever, like good luck, buddy. That was the one thing that kind of killed my college career with court stuff is like reading actual like court cases. The summations are one thing, but reading like an actual like day-to-day, like sentence for sentence court cases, just Jesus, it's brutal. But I was trying to find out some of the witness testimony, and there's a lot of like Jane Does, and they're protecting their identities, which I totally get. It makes total sense. But a lot of it was just like reporting by either CBS News or CNN or New York Times. Okay, so fuck, that's the other thing. Let me come back to that. I'll come back to the major networks here in a second. But like, that's the crazy part to me is like, they never said someone else's name. The victims, the witnesses against Ghislaine Maxwell, is they didn't say anything outside of Maxwell or Epstein in their testimony. If I'm the defense, I'm coming at it hard and at least trying to sow a seed of doubt in some jurors' minds to try to get my client out of it. That's the job, right? They didn't really come at him hard. They didn't push on things. They didn't, at least from what was reported. And the girls never mentioned. That's the thing, is like when they talk about the client list, it's not like one of them went, Bill Clinton did X, Y, or Z. Dershowitz did X, Y, or Z. Jimmy Kimmel did X, Y. Like none of that comes up. And then, at the time, while the trial's going on, you're talking about Trump is in office. Don't you think? I mean, if you remember back to Trump presidency number 1, it was not hard to find people to say horrific and untrue things about Donald J. Trump at all. Like, you were rewarded, you were praised, you were a hero, you were all of these things. So had you actually been a victim, sex victim, and the perpetrator was Donald J. Trump, first of all, fucking blind man picked that guy out of the lineup. But second of all, wouldn't you say not only did Jeff Epstein do this, that, or the other, but you would also say, yeah, and in the corner was the current president of the United States. So if there is a list, we know for a fact that Trump wasn't on it. Because not only would a witness have said that, or at least been coaxed to say that, well, I guess you wouldn't be coaxed to that, but not only would a witness have said that, but if there had been a hint of it by a witness that they thought it was whatever, that would have been everywhere. Even though it still was everywhere, just because he kind of knew him in passing. And they were trying to connect the dots back then, if you can remember that far back, which wasn't that far back. But the thing is, I'm going to respond to you there, Merc. Didn't the judge prohibit the defense from mentioning names? It's very, very possible, and that probably did happen. Subsequently, afterwards, that doesn't mean they can't say anything. That doesn't mean they couldn't make the accusation against said person post-trial as well. And if we think about it, and it's again, if it's the most famous person on planet Earth, Mr. Donald J. Trump, no outlet, there would be no shortage of outlets wanting to tell your story at the time anyway, and lawyers looking to defend you in a case, this, that, or the other. But the other part is if they came out and said it and it's true, then there is no case for slander or whatever the other one was that I can't remember all of a sudden. So there's that part of it. But when we think about this, sorry, clearing the text messages. Anyway, so back to the mainstream media part of this, the corporate media. This was such a big story that they almost reluctantly covered. If you're, and I know that times were good under Trump 1 for CNN, MSNBC, all of them. Their numbers were booming. Business was a booming. Why not keep going with this and just kind of like, he was in Palm Beach, what else is in Palm Beach? I mean, first of all, you got to fill basically 24 hours. Like, why wouldn't you go hard and fast at the whole Epstein thing? Because it's such a just salacious story that involves all of this stuff, all of these higher ups. But if we think about, like, what is it? Operation Mockingbird, I think, is the CIA program that existed, in which basically they control the media by either leaking to them, having someone directly in the office, whether that's newspaper, magazine, or television. They're basically controlling the narrative based on either true or false information that they feed to these reporters if they're not writing it themselves. This kind of gets into the whole Nixon thing. And is it Howard and Bernstein, how a naval intelligence officer all of a sudden is writing like the biggest story ever on planet Earth, even though he's not a writer. So there's that part. So the fact that the mainstream media covered it, but kind of reluctantly, went along just with the story, with the popular narrative, with the allegations, didn't dig deeper, didn't do anything, didn't really go after it. Like, you can't tell me that if you're even a half-assed reporter, young reporter, even, just kind of in the middle as far as your career, the hierarchy of your status within the, cable news world, you're telling me you wouldn't dive into this thing and try to find something a little more to up yourself? Or were you kind of told not to? Because there's that part. Like, this is all, let me see if I can get the time frame here. Doing a really good pod here of you didn't do your homework and now you're fucking Googling shit. So let's see here. Okay. So Weinstein was happening in 2017, 18. So it's the heart of the fucking Me Too movement, right? Like, why wouldn't you come hard and fast, pardon the goddamn pun, like you got another one, like you got a legit, like right on the heels. I mean, this is the thick of the bullshit of the pound Me Too movement right here. And you've got this. It's a sex ring of not only possibly politicians, but actors. Hollywood. Is Harvey Weinstein involved in the Jeffrey Epstein thing? I don't know. They both sound like a Steen, but that leads you into another part of how deep does this fucking rabbit hole actually go? I'm realizing now that for a guy who didn't really give two shits, or was just tired of the Epstein thing because I knew where it was going to go. But the more I talk about it, the more I think about it, the deeper I get into this goddamn rabbit hole. Damn it. Well, I'm in it now, like a full hour into this. Well, if anyone's still watching or paying attention, feel free to comment on it. I mean, it's just, where do you even go from here? Like, did they clean this up? Is that kind of what we think? Did intelligence clean this? Is this guy just a sicko? Or what came first is another thing I always wanted, kind of had an idea of, like, and why Epstein? That one always kind of, why that guy? Was he connected? Who's his fucking dad? Where are his parents? I mean, thinking about if you're Maxwell and Epstein turns up dead, do you just believe that he did that? Like, that's why you didn't run? So you were just like 100% on board with he offed himself. And so you're like, well, this wasn't an intelligence operation, so it's not like anyone's going to off me. He just couldn't handle it. Couldn't hang. But, again, Maxwell's 60 years old. At the time that this was in 2022, she was 60 years old. So she's 3 years into a 20-year sentence. She's probably going to die in prison. I don't know. She might live to 80. You got a shot, kid. But you're just going to take it? I don't understand at all. Let's look at some of these comments. All B. Can't explain the coincidence of the security guard going away and the camera failing. Yeah. It's true. That's what was it? Pam Bondi said that at midnight, because it's an old system, the cameras reset and go to new footage or new video or something, which is just it's possible. Part of my angle on this originally was going to be tying it into the Butler assassination attempt on Donald Trump, which was roughly a year ago. Maybe it was a year ago. Not because they're necessarily connected, but because it's just a comedy of errors and incompetence on the government side. That's one of the other things that so many of us need to try to stay straight and narrow on is club that ain't prison. Epstein might not have thought so, buddy. I don't know, man. I mean, you make a good point, but dang. I don't know. You go to France. We've already established that. But that's one of the things that if we're going to keep it 100, if we're going to be honest with ourselves here, is the government competent or not? Is the CIA competent or not? Is the FBI competent or not? I understand that there's multiple people, multiple facets, multiple entities, even within that one institution. But you're either competent or you're not. I don't know. You either got a bunch of B-teamers who never learn how to reholster a goddamn Glock 19 after a presidential candidate takes a round in the goddamn head. Is the CIA that badass or not? That they were able to use this guy? And by the way, let's think about this. What is it that intelligence even got out of Jeffrey Epstein? That's another thing to think about. Let's do some producing right quick. Bum, bum. There you go. It's funny how you click ticker and it doesn't tick, and then you don't click ticker and it ticks. There you go. Now we're producing, God damn it. There you go. So, what exactly do we even think that intelligence got out of this whole thing? So, if we're going to take the dates that they gave us in their court documents here from on or about 1994 to on or about 2004, even though we waited till or 2005 is the last one here for Epstein. What the hell was he doing from 2005 to 2019? He's hanging out. What was he doing? Did we stop the minoring? Because I got news for you. The pedos are pedos all the time. You don't just dabble in the kids. You're into it. You're fucking into it. Like, you're way into it. That's your thing. You know, like some dudes are into like busty blondes, or some dudes are into other dudes, or some chicks are into chicks. That's probably a bad one because college. But like, people have types when it comes to proclivities. You know, I'm really into firearms. Some people are really into anime. We call them weirdos. But when you're into a thing, you're kind of into a thing. And as it becomes, when you get into like the sexual realm, people are into certain things. We won't get into kinks and all that weird stuff, but like, nobody dabbles in the pedo world because us non-pedos cannot fathom how that even is a thing. How you even think about that. Like that, I get pissed off even thinking about it. But again, from 2000 and let's see, we'll just give him 2006. From 2006 to the second he was arrested, what the fuck was Jeffrey Epstein doing and Ghislaine Maxwell? Where's the fucking money, Lebowski? Like, what were they doing? Why is there no timetable there? Why are we not pressing charges then? What is the intelligence? Can anyone point to anything? And this is a general, like an actual legitimate, I don't know. Is there anything that anyone can point to where you can say a piece of intelligence or something that is just so consequential that it would only make sense that this person had some salacious dirt that did something that, to me, if you're going to run this operation, and obviously I'm not in the CIA, never have been, did want to be in the FBI at one point, and thank God that didn't work out. But like, what are we getting out of this? Did we get some intel out of someone? Did we just force senators and Congress people to vote certain ways? Did we force actors to do movies they didn't want to do? Like, what the fuck did anyone get out of this? Was it to keep funding, sending money to Israel? Because that's weird. Like, honestly, were we even talking about a time where we weren't going to keep sending money to Israel? Like, I just don't understand what the actual point of this actually would even be. Like, man, I don't know. It's just so weird of like, if it's intelligence operation, what intelligence can we even gather by having blackmail on these supposed, why the fuck would you want blackmail on actors? Or Alan Dershowitz? What does that do? You know, and then Dershowitz goes and defends Trump in his impeachment, removal part of the impeachment, if I remember correctly, in his first term. Well, obviously his first term, because they haven't impeached him yet on this term. But if you're Dershowitz and you know they got the goods on you, what? Probably wouldn't run afoul of that shit, right? I don't know. Dershowitz a weird character, man. He could just be stupid. there's that part. Like, just because you're a good lawyer doesn't mean you're actually smart. You're just good at lawyering. But it's just like, what did Merck say? Intelligence is subtle. Yeah, I mean, like, I get that, but I don't understand the bigger picture. You know, what is the bigger picture of this? Is it to go to war with Iraq? I mean, that's in the time frame. People say, well, it's about control. It's about controlling people. Well, why'd you burn the asset then? Because now your asset, one of them's in prison and the other one's in the, well, I think he got burned up. So whatever. But like, he's gone. I don't really understand what actually we're doing here. Like, Iraq or Iran? Good fucking question there, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe we'll never know now, because the one regime that we thought would give us all the answers, you know, in the Dove Bongino and Cash Patel. By the way, let's just tackle the elephant in the room here. If you've never met a person with the last name Patel, don't. And if you have met a person with the last name Patel, especially in the sales world, you know exactly why I just said that. Or any sort of business dealings with someone with the last name Patel. You understand fully why I just said what I just said about don't ever meet a Patel. So there's that elephant in the room. I don't know what the fuck to say. I'm an hour and a half later, and I don't think I got anywhere, but it did feel fun to talk about it. I just really don't understand so much of it. None of it makes sense. Somebody I was listening to today, podcast, I don't remember which one it was, because it's been such a hot button. Like, it's been a thing to talk about because no one understands at all. Like, the deeper you go, the more confused you get. But somebody was saying something to the effect of, excuse me, it's something you know, it's something everyone knows is like true. So it's ridiculous to even say that it isn't, or like something to that effect. I can't remember the quote. I fucking butchered it. By the way, it's just soda water, is not vodka. I promise you. I don't drink vodka. I'm not a fucking retard or a chick. But it's such a you know, the other part that it strikes me too is like, there's another inconvenient, uncomfortable thing of the tying, you know, Maxwell, her father, to Mossad and Israel. Israel more broadly, Mossad more specifically, is that if she really had those connections, wouldn't they get her out? Get her off, get her out. Because until, again, like with the 2008 thing, the plea deal in Florida, no one, I mean, the normies like us, the normal folks, didn't know Maxwell's name. Most of us couldn't pronounce it until we heard it anyway. When we did know Maxwell's name, like, we didn't know Maxwell at all. So like, I don't, that's kind of a uncomfortable aspect of this whole deal of it was definitely a Mossad operation, and Epstein was introduced to Mossad through Maxwell's father, as all these ties to Mossad and Israel and blah 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 blah. Well, that's kind of an uncomfortable fact of this whole thing too, is that if she really had these deep connections to Mossad and Israel, they would have gotten her out of it, right? Like, you would have just left, you would have just gone. Like, Israel's done that in the past with some other people who've been some unsavory characters, let's say, and we've done it too as the United States. Every country's kind of done this with some unsavory characters, but like, wouldn't you, again, if you're Mossad, wouldn't you get your asset out? The bitch has never talked. Seems to be a pretty good asset. You're facing 20. You didn't dime anybody out. You didn't off yourself. You didn't try to really flee. I think maybe she thought she was getting out. I don't know. None of this makes sense. None of it. And then someone was talking about it too, about the autopsy of Epstein, and that Dr. Boden, I can't remember his name. He was like the celebrity one. They did the HBO show, I believe. He's like a celebrity medical examiner or whatever. And he talked about some inconsistencies with just reading the report of the autopsy. Things that didn't make sense, that said basically his conclusion was this guy didn't hang himself. He didn't kill himself. He couldn't, based on the autopsy. Like, okay. Well, that's weird. Because if you were, again, that's another uncomfortable thing for the conspiracy people, is like, okay, hypoid bone fracture. Is that when you get strangled? Is that the bone that breaks, the little bone in there, Merc? I'll give you a second to answer that. I think that's that little bone from squeezing, manual strangulation, if I remember right. But that's an uncomfortable thing too. Is like, okay, if he was this asset, Merc says yes. All right, thanks, buddy. That's wouldn't you doctor the so we have, okay, let me paint a scenario for you. These are the highest levels of intelligence from across the world. We've burned our asset. We've got him under seclusion. We've done we snuffed the guard. We blew the stuff in his face to make him go to sleep. The cameras are off. All the things, right? But we didn't fudge the goddamn autopsy. You think they forgot that one? Oh, shit. We forgot there would be an autopsy on a suspicious death in a jail. Damn. It's like, I told you, Kurt. It's that time, by the way. None of it, just when you think it starts to make sense, you can think of a little thing where it's like, even we wouldn't do that as just normies if we had any power. Like, this shit doesn't make sense at all. And that is where I was going to tie it into eventually, or initially. I was going to tie it into the Butler thing. Cheers. I was going to tie it into the Butler, Pennsylvania thing, because I don't think there's any grand conspiracy with the Butler, Pennsylvania assassination attempt. I just think it's a bunch of the wrong people in the wrong positions, without the experience, without the expertise, without any know-how on how to do things, leading to a comedy of errors, which almost culminated in our current president never having that chance because he would have gotten splattered all over CNN, which I understand is a weird thing that CNN all of a sudden is covering this one. I get it. I'm right there with you. Just a coincidence on that. I don't think there's any grand conspiracy because he's still alive. You can go and we can talk conspiracies for the next 100 years about JFK. Who put up, was Oswald acting alone? Was he put up to it? Was he a patsy? Was he this? Was he that? Blah, blah, blah. But the fact of the matter is the target didn't survive. That's the fact. That's why I don't think Butler was an inside job. I think it was just a bunch of, it was a horrific lack of communication between local Smokies and the federales. But I don't know what Epstein is or was. The other part of the Epstein thing, which is a little odd to me, is you have eyewitness testimony saying these things, and I guess it's just the culmination of evidence or of witnesses against you. But it's a lot of like he said, she said. So if you're Maxwell, you can just go, that's a lie that never happened. That's a lie that never happened. These kids are making this up. They've been put up to it. They're this, they're that. I don't know. None of it makes sense. It's about all I know. One of the things that does make sense is that Tim Kennedy is a fucking asshole. So I meant to pull the tweet. I forgot to pull the tweet. Hopefully I'm a better on-air talent than I am producer. But Tim Kennedy issued an apology, which may or may not have been made by AI. Even if it was made by AI, that's kind of what AI is for. Anyway, some stolen valor. Said he had a bronze star with valor, I believe. That was a lie. It reminded me of, I used to listen to Ben Shapiro quite a bit. I don't really have anything against Ben necessarily. I just find his show to just be stale at this point. But I remember he had Tim Kennedy on, and I remember Kennedy talking about why he joined the military, that he was like in New York when it happened. He saw X number of things, blah, blah, blah. Talked about things that he saw and this guy and specifically. And I just remember thinking at the time, like, man, I'm not, first of all, I'm a nobody, but second of all, I don't want to not believe this guy, not because I give two shits about him personally or know him or know anyone that knows him, but it's like, man, this guy did deploy. He did join. He did do some things that I definitely didn't do. He did fight for his country. So it was just one of those things like, well, maybe it's almost like artistic license, but man, it just never set right. And so as these things started to happen, some things started to come out and the scrutiny got hotter, I will at least give him the kudos of issuing the apology. Even if it was written by AI, I don't really care if it was, because he still did it. And maybe AI probably is smarter than him, for being honest. It's a bit of a meathead. And I don't mean that in a negative aspect. I don't mean that as a pejorative. But I was also thinking about it because I think it was the Sean Ryan show podcast that had Shrek. Was it John McPhee? And he talked about Tim Kennedy and this, some him being part of the unit and him being in this and that and all this other stuff. I hope Exit hears this. There's a lot of McPhee's stuff that I do believe, his stories. There's a lot I don't believe. I have nothing to back up my non-belief. It's just a feeling. It's really just a feeling. Because it's all just a little too self-aggrandizing. No, I don't think. No, Shrek never said he was in the unit in Task Force Delta or whatever, but he was Green Beret and Shrek. They're basically both are at Fort Bragg, and that's where they did the jujitsu and all that stuff, and that's where he came across him. But I don't believe that Kennedy ever even tried to become Delta. I think he got out, but he was just kind of a shithead. It's kind of how Shrek put it. But there's stuff about Shrek's. What I was going to say, where I've gotten burned on this in the past was with Chris Kyle. And God rest his soul. Chris Kyle did a lot of things I never did, never even thought about doing. I'll put all these guys in the category of great Americans, good American, great American. If you're going to sign up, go overseas, go downrange, if I wasn't going to lose my ears here, I would literally tip my cap but to you. So I say this with begrudgingly. But with Chris Kyle, I bought a hook, line, and sinker. Watched all the interviews I could back in the day when he was doing his book tour. I have the book. I've read the book like twice. Got burned on that with some of the stories in there. Although there is one story in there that is real. And then also got burned apparently with Marcus Luttrell and Lone Survivor. So I don't know. It's a weird deal with those guys. It's also a little odd that like Shrek kind of came out of nowhere, just bam, hit, right? Sheriff of Baghdad. He's got all his products and all that. Man, I hope you're doing great. Hope you're making millions of dollars doing what you want to do. I don't know. There's a there. It's just a feeling. I can't explain it. It's just a feeling. Could I be 100% wrong? Absolutely. Could I be right? It's always a possibility. And I don't like to kind of call those guys out like that or anything. And I don't really feel like I'm calling them out. I'm just saying that like once it becomes a little bigger than life, it becomes very self-aggrandizing. It becomes kind of the me. Your spidey sense should start to tingle at that point. Because especially when you're talking about like, I mean, we've seen it with some of the SEAL stuff as well. Those aren't me guys. They're unit guys. They're team guys. They're the guy next to me guys. A guy who's caught a lot of crap in the past is John Lavelle, the warrior poet guy. I don't really know anything about him. Like personally, I watched him or listened to him on Sean Ryan. I never got the spidey sense, the self-aggrandizement from him. Again, still could be completely full of it. Yeah, right there with you, dude. The thing about those guys, like, is you didn't have to lie, man. You didn't have to make stuff up. And what's really weird is I've got Lone Survivor. I've got the book Lone Survivor. The movie's pretty terrible, by the way. The gunfight scene when they first kick off is pretty badass in the forest. That's about it. Other than that, the movie's absolute garbage. Not Pete Berg's best work. The Kingdom is one of Pete Berg's best films he's ever done. Mainly because Jamie Foxx can just, bro. But where the fuck was I going with this? Oh, the Marcus Luttrell. So I've read Lone Survivor a couple of times. Then I got his other book, Service, which talks about his time in Iraq. And one of the things that was weird about the book Service is that, and this got lumped onto Chris Kyle, even though Chris Kyle didn't put this in, is that Marcus Luttrell tells a story that Chris Kyle was getting gas and one or two guys tried to rob him, and he pulls his 45 and dispatches both of them, and it doesn't make the papers because there's a local sheriff or whatever. That story was weird when I read it. Of like, wait, what? Like, this doesn't... Because Chris Kyle's not like a small guy, or wasn't a small guy. If I was going to rob somebody, especially in a small town, which again, even that just doesn't make sense. But if I was going to rob somebody, I'm not going to rob a guy who's, competent, capable, and looks like he can take care of himself. Like, I'll just rob some little old lady or something, right? Like, I'm not going to rob that dude. That makes zero fucking sense. I mean, I just remember thinking that, like, dude, this makes zero sense. And then I think that was the same book, Service, from Marcus Luttrell, that he was talking about going to Africa and hunting big game in the bush, and getting up on it, because he's like, after you've hunted man, like, that's the only thing that, like, gets your adrenaline going. I was like, okay. I don't know why this is in the book, but whatever. I don't know. But it's a lot like the 13 Hours book, which I don't think was called 13 Hours. I forget what the name of the book was that they based 13 Hours on. Maybe it was 13 Hours. But I read that book before they made the movie. One of the things I don't remember reading was how they were there to secure the uninterrupted flow of arms from Libya to Syria. So, there's that. I don't know. Feels like we kind of derailed here a little bit, but I don't know. This is kind of fun. So there's that part of it too. And we have the most viewers we've had yet. So I guess we just keep going. Everybody else is having fun. I'm having fun. If you guys are hang, I'll hang. But cool. 86 whole viewers. Feel free to comment, and I'll talk about damn near anything at this point. Also, the SEAL that cleared the hallway so O'Neill could shoot Bin Laden. Yeah, I mean, Rob O'Neill's an interesting character too. I don't know what to think about Rob. I really don't. He's very interesting to listen to. I listened to his Tucker Carlson interview, podcast, whatever we're calling it. I don't know. Felt like there was some, I don't want to say inconsistencies, but like a failure to understand / communicate between Rob and Tucker. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to call these guys out, like I don't want to say they're full of shit or any of that, because again, they went down range, they were in the choppers, they shot guys. Like he did some shit, man. Like he did a lot of shit. One of the guys that no one ever hears about, and sorry, probably that's right there. There you go, dude. The real hero was Chapman. That's a fact. Which Rob mentioned. They talked about Roberts Ridge. They talked about Chapman. He talked about the helicopter pilot, who I can't remember his name, which bothers the shit out of me. The Night Stalker pilot. I think he was Night Stalker, maybe Soar. Either way, another great Sean Ryan episode is with that pilot whose name I can't remember. But yeah, Chapman. If Chapman doesn't have Chapman doesn't have the Medal of Honor, does he? That's last I heard, there was a movie being in production or being developed, in development for Chapman, and I think Jake Gyllenhaal was going to play Chapman, which I thought was that's a legit choice. I think that's a good choice. I really want to see that movie if it ever gets made. We can give it up for Jake Gyllenhaal, right? Kingdom is. Yes, I love The Kingdom. I love that movie. I've watched that movie so many times. Such a good movie. Oh, that's nasty. Yeah, I love that movie. Where the fuck was I at this point? Yeah, Chapman. I worked with a guy who was a combat controller who told me about Chapman. I'd never heard of him before. And then he showed me the video, and I was just in fucking awe. If you guys haven't seen the video of Chapman, it's a night vision video, gets left behind, but there's still, I believe it's a drone capturing the video. Bro gets knocked out. I think he's in some sort of bunker, is knocked out. Everybody leaves. They don't realize he's there. They were there to get Robert's body, I believe, if I'm not remembering wrongly. And it's like an RPG hits. He gets knocked out. They got to exfil some SEALs out of there, one of which is also knocked out. One of the SEALs jumps up on like this berm, engaging Al Qaeda. They're in like 3 feet of snow, by the way, up on the side of a mountain. And a SEAL jumps up on a like berm with I think it's an M60, the pig. And I guess he just had figured he was going out and he was going to go out with a fucking bang. He hops up on that berm, and you can see this all in the night vision video. He hops up on that berm with a 60 and just has it like out of sight. He's fucking Rambo, just laying it near at the Al Qaeda guys, which this is at night, which is why it's all in night vision. And he can't see him, and he's just fucking trying to lay waste to these dudes. And it's either grenade or RPG goes off, blows up, and knocks him out. Literally, like knocks him out. And so they're like, all the SEALs at that point are like, we got to get the fuck out of here, man. And they don't realize they leave Chapman behind. And the Al Qaeda doesn't realize Chapman's there either. He's like under, and he comes to at some point, and just it's wild. It's absolutely fucking wild, man. Dude's there to call in UAVs, call in airstrikes, close air support. He ends up with a rifle in his hand, just putting dudes down. So, I mean, it's, if you haven't seen that video of Chapman, it's not hard to find. Watch that. It's badass. But that guy needs the Medal of Honor if he doesn't have it. And I don't believe he does have it. And he should have it. That's absolutely ridiculous at this point. It just, by the way, whatever reason you have 12:43 a.m. as your time is screwing up the comments. So I have to keep like scrolling up to see your comments. So joke's on you, buddy. I want to stop scrolling up at certain points. Just all Merc all the time. He engaged in hand to hand. Yeah, he did. That dude went down like. Yeah. That dude went down fighting. Tooth and nail, as they say. Spartan. That's a tough one. But anyway. So I'm not going to talk about the military anymore. I'm shouldn't really talk as much as I can, but it's kind of a universal thing though too. If something sounds too good to be true, as far as like it's just such a crazy story, you know, whatever it is, it's just like I don't know, pump the brakes, you know, it's a trust but verify kind of thing. Like, yeah, it's probably true, but like, see if we can find something else that kind of lends itself to it. That way, kind of backs it up, I think is the best way to do that. But yeah, so, let's see here. But anyway, Tim Kennedy's a fucking asshole. But at least he did apologize. I'll give him that. Road to Redemption. He basically has no sponsors at this point, apparently. I do want to talk about Tim Kennedy's UFC career because there's someone in the comments who doesn't want to talk about it because he doesn't want to admit the fact that Tim Kennedy was one of the elite fighters in the UFC, in the world. Yes, he did not get the strap. He did not. But Dan Marino didn't win a Super Bowl. That doesn't mean he wasn't worth shit. Okay? Played on a lot of good teams, had a lot of good years, played against some of the best teams ever do it. Just like Tim Kennedy stepped in the ring or cage with some of the best guys ever do it. Yeah, he didn't win. Didn't get the strap. That dude could straight bang. You know, so for all the stolen valor stuff that he's done and the bullshit he's said and all that, careful now. That dude can bang. So don't forget that. Don't ever forget that. I was just waiting for the comment. Well, we're having a great time. Well, I'm having a good time. Hope everyone else is. Hope everyone else isn't. Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Love it. Tony Romo was a great quarterback. Tony Romo was not the problem with the Dallas Cowboys, bro. I hate to tell you. So, after Parcells left, after Wade Phillips was relieved, those good teams that they had under Jason Garrett, in which they would have a big lead and then lose it. That's not Romo's fault. That's because you can't run the ball and you're not dedicated to running the ball. You get out to a 35-3 lead, a 21-3 lead, whatever, in the first or second quarter. This is the NFL. They're going to find a way to try to claw back. If you can run the ball and milk the clock, their ability to do that as the team who's down it's really tough. But when you cannot run the football and you're constantly throwing the goddamn ball, incompletion, stop the clock. You're not bleeding the clock off. That's not Romo's fault. That's coach's fault. That's Jason Garrett's fault. That's Wade Phillips's fault. That's now Parcells will bleed the clock. Everybody wants to go back to when Romo, they're lining up for the field goal, and Romo fucks up the hold and then doesn't make it in the end zone. All right, fair enough. He had a bad play. But why were they within a field goal of winning the game? I don't know. Don't know. Maybe Romo had something to do with it. Don't really know. Seems like he probably did. Seems like he probably did. And by the way, let's look at this from the other view. So if you have won the Super Bowl, it means you're a really good quarterback, right? Trent Dilfer got a ring as a starting quarterback, not a backup. Was a starter the whole year, or at least majority of the year. Trent Dilfer has a ring. Brad Johnson has a ring. Let's see, what other shit quarterbacks have a ring? Russell Wilson has a ring. By the way, in the chat, in a group chat that I'm a part of, the here we are in sports. Tune in for Epstein, you get sports. I forget which Super Bowl number it was, but Seattle Seahawks versus New England Patriots. And the interception at the goal line that the Patriots got. The discussion in the group chat, which I couldn't really be a part of because I was too busy making notes and trying to produce this fantastic show that now 92 of you are now tuned into. Thank you very much. Everybody knew it was going to Marshawn Lynch, right? Everybody knew it was going to beast mode. That's why the real play call was not giving it to beast mode and was not throwing it out there like they threw it. Because if you look, I think it was 2 plays earlier, the Seahawks had ran the same formation. They ran that formation a few times on that drive. I think it was 2 plays earlier. They ran it 2 plays in a row, or 3 plays earlier. They ran it 2 plays in a row, skipped one, and then ended up running it. The Patriots' alignment was the same. The way they played it was pretty much the same. But what the Patriots did on defense was they kind of baited him into doing it because I think it was Brandon Browner was the corner on the line with the receiver right across from him. So I'm going to try to draw this visual with my words. The way the Seattle Seahawks lined up was you had receiver on the line and receivers right behind him. So they're stacked. Okay. So you've got receiver 1, receiver 2. So they're stacked on top of each other. This guy's covering this guy on the line, off the line. So the way the Patriots played it, they're basically playing man, or at least a man look. So the way the Patriots played it, here's our Seattle guys. The Patriots played it. Brandon Browner is in this guy's face. And then I can't believe I can't remember his name. Oh my God. Anyway, other Patriots corner is stacked right behind him. So the idea here is when they were off the goal line, when they were on like the 20-yard line or so, when they ran this formation before, Seattle was testing them out. But what the Patriots were doing, instead of Browner, what he would do is he would just like let him come off the line and jam him. So he would let the Seahawks receiver come off the line and he would just kind of hands-on jam him and then follow him. Okay. So they're baiting them into doing that at the goal line. Okay. When they're on the goal line in the infamous interception play, what happens is Malcolm Butler, that's who intercepted. So this is Malcolm Butler. What happens is, and Malcolm Butler and Brandon Browner have both given interviews on what was going on. What happens is Brandon Browner, this is Browner, again, across from wide receiver. What they knew was about to happen, whether it was run or not, they didn't know. But here's what they knew was going to happen, is that the wide receiver, what they're playing for is kind of pass, run second, because they're out on islands. So they have them, they're split pretty far out. So even if they run it, the odds of them just getting there and stopping Lynch, if he comes like off tackle or something, are very, very slim because they're on like the 1, right? They're right there. So what happens is you go back and watch the replay. It's fantastic. What happens is Browner turns to Butler and says, basically says, you know what to do. I'm going to take this guy out. So within was it 3 yards? You can basically, or 5 yards, you can basically make as much contact as you want so long as the ball is not in the air. So what Browner does, instead of letting a receiver come off the line, what he does is the snap of the ball is he just jams him back. So when you watch the replay, he jams him back, which he hadn't done all game or on that drive. And they had done that formation numerous times. So what he does is he jams the receiver. So he hands on and pushes him back. When he does that, it causes the receiver, the other Seahawks receiver, to kind of have to step over. Well, the second he does that, it also clears a line for Malcolm Butler to see kind of what's going on. So Butler sees the jam and he sees that receiver start to come inside. And so Butler just beelines it. I'm going to meet him at the goal line. And that's why he picks it off. So with knowing that and knowing what happened on the play, the real play call here, what the Seahawks should have done, Pete Carroll, offensive coordinator, I can't remember who it was at the time, what they really should have done, you don't hand it to Marshawn, because we all knew it was going to Marshawn. Everybody outside of Browner and Butler knew it was going to Marshawn. The play call is an RPO, and you put it in Russell Wilson's hands, because on an RPO, what you're going to do is you're going to fake it to your running back. You're going to mesh. You're actually going to put it in his, like he's going to get the ball. You're going to put it in his belly. But if you don't give him the ball, he doesn't take the ball. So you give, you can take. What that would do is give Russell Wilson the option of giving the ball. If it's open, he can give it. But if it's not open, what most likely is going to happen is the end and the backer, forget exactly how they were lined up, are going to crash down, because, again, everybody knows that Marshawn's getting the ball, right? We have to assume that the Patriots were slightly smart to not just totally crash. At least that was the scheme. But this is the Super Bowl. There's not enough time. This is it. So probably what's going to happen is, even if that guy crashes down, Russell Wilson is going to mesh on an RPO, pull the ball, and now it's just a foot race to the corner. The only thing that can happen, or a foot race around the corner, the only thing that you could do at that point is your backer can scrape over the top and possibly get him. But that was the play call. That's where they fucked up, because also in an RPO, you can still throw as well. So that's where they completely fucked up. The play call was give Russell Wilson the ball, give him the RPO option. How we went from Epstein to Russell Wilson RPO and being the right call in the Super Bowl so they didn't lose. By the way, no one happier that the Seahawks lost that Super Bowl. Like, I'm not a Patriots fan, but just go watch the replay, though, of Richard Sherman and his reaction when it gets intercepted is one of the best ever reactions you'll ever see. He looked like he watched somebody get killed. I'll just put it that way. It's so worth watching. But all right, I don't know what the hell else to talk about, but there's a bunch of you in here, which is pretty cool. Oh man. All right. Well, to those new viewers who have jumped in here recently, this is a podcast, live stream, whatever we want to call it, that I do every Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Central Time, also known as correct time. So if you guys want to join, if you want to come hang out next week, I'll be here next week. I try to post something the day before if I can remember. If for some reason I have to adjust the time, like last week, I had Joey and Samuel from Gays Against Groomers, which is another great live stream and podcast that's out there that you can go back and watch either on X or Rumble or YouTube. It is on YouTube, so you can go back. It's also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of the, I guess, wherever you get finer podcasts. That's a really good episode to listen to, because we went into, or more importantly, they went into the Scarmetti decision, which upheld the Tennessee state law banning puberty blockers and other things for use on minors for transition and whatnot. a really good episode. Really appreciate those guys hanging out with me. I took up way too much of Samuel's time. But very, very glad that he hung out and had all the great information that he did. Same with Joey. Great information breaking down that court case. I'm probably going to have Joey back at some point, up to his schedule on that. Really good guest to have. Really smart. And good at the court stuff that I don't like to read. So, but every Thursday we do these. Last week was at a different time just because Joey's on the West Coast. So try to, might have to adjust the schedule based on if I have a guest and their schedule and where they're at, what have you. So, that being said, also, if you have something interesting to say or just want to hang out and be a guest on the show, feel free to DM me on X and we can kind of go from there. But let's see here. Last swig of the Bushmills. That being said, I appreciate everyone for hanging out. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you also enjoyed my breakdown of the final play of the Seattle Seahawks and New England Patriots Super Bowl. Leave you with these last words. Those of you that are 2A absolutists like I am, we had our small setback. I'll kind of close the show the way I opened it. We had a small setback with the One Big Beautiful Bill and the Hush Act and the Short Act getting stripped out of there by a rando, unelected, nameless, faceless, well, not nameless, but faceless bureaucrat. But we're making progress. We have the royal we, have a lawsuit challenging the legitimacy of the NFA now that there is no tax provision there. And the odds of it going away are very, very high. This is uncharted territory for getting rid of the NFA. And I think in the end, this is the better way because it not only, I mean, I wish the Short Act and the Hush Act would have been part of that and signed into law, but it still would have left some provisions in there. This has the potential of completely destroying the NFA as law, period. And that would be the biggest of all wins. So that being said, everybody stay positive. Everybody keep it on them and keep calling your Congress people and senators and keep the pressure on and make your voices heard. Support FPC, GOA, NAGR in their fight. And also Palmetto State Armory is fighting it. So is, I think, Silencer Shop is also part of the lawsuit to get rid of the NFA in court. So support those guys as much as you can, whether it's buying products, donating directly, what have you. If you follow me on X, you see that I post some products from Palmetto State Armory. A lot of times, just know that those dollars you spend not only with me, but with Palmetto go back into better causes. I don't, any money I get from my affiliate links, I put back into either this, the YouTube channel, any of those things. So I literally don't profit off of it anyway. It really just subsidizes with the other things I'm already doing. So I appreciate all of you for doing that. I appreciate those of you who bought in the past, who will buy in the future. I appreciate those who like and share those. I appreciate those people who have tuned in. And I appreciate those who tune in the future. And with that being said, you guys have a great weekend and don't do anything too crazy. And see you all next time.